Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry Saravia at the movies. So we're going to make this a very short video. And I was going to do a full-scale review of Barbarossa, but that will be upcoming soon, very soon. I'm writing a review for that one first. That's a Western from 1982, for those who don't know, with Willie Nelson and Gary Busey. So that is upcoming. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about an actual a scene from Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. And there's a scene in there where Frank Sheeran, played by Robert De Niro, um, he finds out from his wife that their daughter was pushed around by a shopkeeper, a local shopkeeper from around the corner. So Frank is quite upset, obviously, and he asks the daughter twice, "Did he touch you? Did he touch you?" And she nods, and that's that. And then the wife says, "Frank, he didn't mean anything by it. What are you talking about? He pushed her. He touched her. So he takes his daughter with him, and they go around the corner to this particular little grocery shop, and he asks the daughter again, "Is that who pushed you?" And she says, "Yes, that's." So he goes in, punches the guy, throws him through the glass, entrance glass doors, and then virtually breaks his hand on the curb. Guy's, on the ground and can't get up, screaming in agony and pain. And now, the scene, I think, is actually very well done. It's done practically in one unbroken take, other than a close-up reaction of the daughter, who, startled by the fact that her father's stomping on a guy's hand. But that pointed to something that happened to me. Now, not exactly in the same way, but close. We used to live, I was around 9 or 10 years old, so we lived in Fresh Meadows, New York, Queens, New York. And we were in the Fresh Meadows apartments. So these were 3-story apartments, and there was a courtyard that had chain link fences and grass, green grass. And I just found out, actually, from a friend of mine that he shared a photo, because in those days the apartments were, you could just walk right in. There was no security door or anything like that. But now apparently they've installed a security door, and so whichever apartment you live in, if you either forgot your keys, or you're a friend looking to visit somebody, you just hit the number. They didn't have that in those days, so there was no real security. Anyway, that's neither here or there, but I thought it was interesting. So we lived in the 3rd floor of this apartment, and the apartment was designed in a odd way. There were 3 apartments on each floor. So we were on one side, here was a staircase, and then there were 2 other apartments down the hall, which weren't, wasn't much of a hallway really. And in one apartment lived this bully named John, who was about 14 years old at the time. I was about 9 or 10. And anyway, this guy John, by the way, I'm not going to give his last name, but he is somebody that's been featured on Dr. Phil many years back, and I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm not even going to say why he ended up on Dr. Phil or what he did. So if any of you want to do the research, go ahead. I'll maybe even privately email somebody if they're really interested in knowing who this guy is. But anyhow, so this kid used to bully me frequently and throw rocks at me and punch me. I think one time there was in the rooftop, his kid brother tried to lure me up there and locked the door, but it was one of those doors that had the hook, so you could just push it up and you could get out. But anyway, so he used to punch me, and this was John, the older brother. So one time, I don't know what happened, it went a little too far, and that's all I really know. But I do remember the incident, and so I came home and I was crying, and my father said, "What the hell happened? What is it?" And I might have had a bruise. I don't know what happened. Um, so my father had enough, and then he said, "Where is he?" And I said, "He's down in the courtyard," because in this particular community, there were people that were always sitting outside. It was a predominantly white Jewish neighborhood for the most part, certainly mostly white. Um, and then there was a kid named Goro. I remember it was a Japanese kid who did some terrific stunts with his dirt bike. Anyhow, it was a community. So John was out there, and my father said, "Come with me." And he didn't take me by my hand, but I had to go with him. So I went downstairs, and he confronted John. He says, "You hit my kid. You hit my kid." And this kid, John, was about roughly close to my father's height. And then he smacked him. And then this kid, John, he picked up a giant stick. And my father said, "If you try to use that, you're going to be in worse trouble than you are already." And I remember how it ended. Now, I do remember feeling scared for the kid, John, mainly because John at that point seemed small. You know what I mean? He didn't seem like the bully that he was. I saw him as a giant, but my father, obviously was much older. So it was one of those things, and that scene in The Irishman reminded me of that. So it goes to show that throughout Scorsese's career, who's usually unblinkingly honest and very blunt, in particularly scenes of that nature, I feel more attuned to his cinema because of it. Because I felt like he captured a certain energy, a certain type of street energy, if you want to call it that. Obviously, my father was not mafia or anything like that, or mob, or a hitman, or anything like that. He worked for Merrill Lynch, so that's a different type of mentality. But you see, like in those days, certainly nobody called the police, unless a gun was pulled, and that wasn't even common. I mean, today I wouldn't even know what a bully like that would do. He probably would have a gun. It's crazy what happens today. But in those days, nobody would call the police. Or today, even, somebody would have called the police on my father. My father would have been far guiltier of a crime than that kid, more than likely. So it's just different. But Scorsese has a way, I've noticed in many of his great films, there are scenes that recall something in my own past or in something I've observed. Whatever it is, he captures it with raw honesty, and that's what I like about it. The scene, I think, with the shopkeeper from The Irishman has been criticized because it seemed like De Niro was moving around like a 70-year-old as opposed to the character who was in his 30s, more or less. And I thought he did it very well. It seemed very genuine to me. I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan of Scorsese. It's just, it seemed genuine. It seemed honest. It seemed to the point, and pretty much how it would look like from the perspective of somebody who's happened to be looking at this across the street and just observe it as a real incident. So that is the interest in that. And I thought I would share something personal because sometimes it pops up. And anyway, it's that just reminds me of my childhood. It wasn't really traumatic or anything like that, but it did stay with me, and I thought I'd mention it. So that's all. That's it. So, are there any Scorsese films you've seen that feel that there's a scene that felt genuine to something you may have experienced or whatever it may be, or any movie that you've watched that shows something of unblinking brutality or whatever the case may be? It doesn't have to be brutal, but just a raw, honest moment that you thought, "Oh God, yeah, I've been exactly through that." So there are many other films where I felt this way, but Scorsese is the one who I usually feel most attuned to. He seems to capture sometimes the veracity of moments like that, a certain type of energy. Anyway, so I just thought I'd share that. It's just something from the past. There you go. So anyway, that's it. Let me your thoughts, and please subscribe to my channel. And this is Jerry Saravia at the Movies. signing off.